The court is now in session for the trial of Mr. Forrest.
The prosecution is ready, Your Honor. The defense is ready, Your Honor.
Mr. Ross, please give to the court your opening statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defendant, Mr. George Forrest, was at the scene of the crime. The prosecution has the evidence he committed the murder, and we have the witness who saw him do it. The prosecution sees no reason to doubt the fact of this case, Your Honor.
I see. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Let's begin then.
If we may call our first witness, Your Honor. The prosecution calls the chief officer at the scene, Detective Wright. Witness, please state your name and profession to the court.
Sir, my name is James Clark, sir. I'm detective in charge of homicides, sir.
Detective White, please describe for us the details of this murder.
Very well, sir. The body was found here.
And the cause of death?
Loss of blood due to being struck by a... The murder weapon was a saber, or next to the body, sir.
The court accepts the saber as evidence.
Now, detective.
Yes, sir.
You immediately arrested Mr. George Forrest, who was found at the scene, correct? Can you tell me why?
Yes, I had our evidence. He did so.
Detective White, please testify to the court about this hard evidence.
As soon as I heard a shot, I rushed to the scene. There was one person alive, the defendant, George Forrest. I immediately arrested Mr. Forrest. Why? Because during the night, I ran up to the crime scene. I saw from Mr. Forrest killing Mr. Mushroom.
You saw Mr. Forrest killing Mr. Mushroom, you say? Very well, Mr. White. You may begin your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Something matter?
No, Your Honor. I'd like to begin my cross-examination.
As soon as I heard a shot, I rushed to the scene. There was one person alive, the defendant, George Forrest. I immediately arrested Mr. Forrest. Why? Because during the night, I ran up to the crime scene. I saw from Mr. Forrest killing Mr. Mushroom.
Hold on just 1 second. If I heard correctly, you said you arrested him because you had the hard evidence?
Who? Did I say that? Man?
I heard you said it.
You did say it.
You said it. Exactly! What about you, a suspicious detective, Canadian detective, claim was hard evidence?
Oh, what? I'm not suspicious. And I'm not sure Canadian. Well, I guess I'm Canadian.
That's enough. Detective White, do you have any more solid proof or other than your claims, Detective?
Yes. Sorry, I get the order of things mixed up in my testimony. There was something I should have told about Forrest. Your Honor.
Very well, Detective. Let's hear your testimony again.
After secreting the suspect, I examined the scene of the crime with my own eyes. I found a memo written on a piece of paper next to the victim's body. On it, the word forest was clearly written in blood. Lab test results showed that the blood was the victim. Also, there was blood found on the victim's fingers. Before he died, the victim wrote the name of the killer.
Silence, order please.
Oh, you like that? That's my hard evidence.
Before we begin the cross-examination, I have a question for you, detective.
You know?
Why didn't you testify about this vital piece of evidence the first time?
I'm really embarrassed. I forgot about it. Your Honor, sorry.
Try to be more careful. Very well. The defense may begin its cross-examination.
After security was horseback, I examined the scene of the crime with my own eyes. I found a memo written on a piece of paper next to the victim's body.
Hold it. Just because you found it next to the body doesn't mean the victim wrote it.
Oh, then would it write it?
The killer, anyone can see that.
Oh, you're saying the killer wrote his own name? But
He was framed. Objection, hold on. If that's the case, where's your evidence? Ha! I guess that was a bit of a tall order for you. Those without evidence shouldn't open their mouth, Mr. Wright. Well, detective, tell us what was written on that memo you found.
on it, the word forest was clearly written in blood. Lab test results showed that the blood was the victim. Also, there was blood found on the victim's fingers. Before he died, the victim wrote the name of the killer.
Objection! Detective Wagner. There is one thing I want you to clarify for me here. You say that the victim, Mr. Mushroom, wrote this note? That he was accusing the defendant, Mr. Forrest. That's really what you're saying.
What? This isn't one of those lawyer tricks now, is it? Of course she wrote it. Who else would have?
You have it backward, detective.
Backward?
The victim is the only one person who could have not written it. This is a report from your department, detective. Immediate death due to blows from a saber. He died immediately. No betting your way out of this one, detective.
Order. The defense has a point. Someone who died immediately wouldn't have the time to write anything down.
Objection! Mr. Wright, I beg your pardon, but when exactly did you obtain that autopsy report? When? It was the day after the murder.
Please, prosecution's brand me.
That autopsy report is outdated, Your Honor. What? A second autopsy report was performed yesterday, at my request. Date was almost immediate due to blows from a saber, but there is a possibility the victim lived for several minutes after the blows. I received those results this morning. No way! Your Honor, it's quite easy to imagine that the victim did have time to write Forrest. That's all.
I see.
Why, Mr. Wright, you look shocked? Something you want to say? Objection! Yes, I won't. Your Honor, I have the hard evidence that Mr. Forrest is not the murderer.
Mr. White, please tell to the court about the new hard evidence.
Recent lab test results showed that there is fingerprints on the saber. Could the prosecution, Mr. Works, please, call the owner of the fingerprints to testify to the court, please?
Prosecution.
No matter. The prosecution calls the owner of the fingerprints found on the saber.
The trial is deferred until the arrival of the new witness.